Hey everybody, it's me, Father Scott, your pastor. You know, yesterday we walked through Holy Week, and we tried to do that live, and it didn't quite work so well. So today we're actually coming to you in a recorded video, so we don't have any of those live glitches, and I want to thank Beth for helping me to put this together and to splice all these videos together. So if you tried to watch yesterday and it didn't go so well, there's a better version on our website and on our Facebook page, and so you can go there and watch that and get a better sense of the Holy Week. But today we're going to talk about the seating arrangement at the Last Supper. And I know you might think, like, what does that have to do with anything? Why did you get me on Facebook to learn about that? Why is that important? Well, just trust me on this. I think that you will find it to be super interesting, and it will totally open your mind to a better understanding of what actually happened at the Last Supper. This is the kitchen table where I grew up. My parents have moved out of the house, but before they moved, I took pictures of every room. And so I pulled up this picture, and this is the picture of the kitchen and the table in the kitchen. Now, when I was a kid, we had chairs on every side, but we had that bench there on that side of the table. And that is where I would sit. So I would climb over the side of it and I'd sit in there. And usually I'd be there by myself. But every once in a while, if we had enough people at dinner, one of my brothers would come and sit with me. And I always thought that was cool, that my brother would be willing to come and sit next to me. It just made my meal to know that one of my brothers, who I look up to all of them, that one of them was sitting there next to me. Okay, so this is where I grew up. This is where I would sit for dinner. Now, I live in the rectory now. So this is the dining room table in the rectory. And Father Justin and Monsignor and I, we all have our own chair. We always sit in the same chair when we share a meal together. So Monsignor is up in that chair, Father Justin's in this one, and I'm in that one. Those are our seats. Those are where we sit when we have dinner. What about you? What does your table look like? And where do you sit? Do you like to sit next to anybody? Do you get excited like I did when anybody sits next to you? Maybe your mom or your dad or one of your siblings. Or maybe you have cousins or grandma and grandpa come over. Do you get excited when they sit next to you? Do you feel like you have a connection with them maybe? So where we sit is important to us. Maybe you're one of those that you always sit in the same spot, just like I did when I was a kid. Or maybe you change it up. But where we sit and who we sit next to matters. And you know what? The same thing was true at the Last Supper. Now, this is the text of the Last Supper, and we're going to just read through it really quickly, if that's okay. So before the feast of Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to pass from this world to the Father. He loved his own in the world, and he loved them to the end. The devil had already induced Judas, son of Simon the Iscariot, to hand him over. So during supper, fully aware that the Father had put everything into his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God, he rose from supper and took off his outer garments. He took a towel and tied it around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and dry them with the towel around his waist. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Master, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered and said to him, "What I am doing you do not understand now, but you will understand later." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered him, "Unless I wash you, you will have no inheritance with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Master, then not only my feet, but my hands and head as well." Jesus said to him, Whoever has bathed has no need except to have his feet washed, for he is clean all over. So you are clean, but not all. For he knew who would betray him. For this reason he said, not all of you are clean. Okay, and we go on a little bit further, and we see who are the people that we know were at that meal? Who is John the Evangelist talking about? So we know Jesus, and we know Simon Peter are there. Okay, so let's move on a little bit. 22 to 30 of that same chapter. When he had said this, Jesus was deeply troubled and testified, "Amen, amen, I say to you, one of you will betray me." The disciples looked at one another, at a loss as to whom he meant. One of his disciples, the one whom Jesus loved, was reclining at Jesus' side. So Simon Peter nodded to him to find out whom he meant. He leaned back against Jesus' chest and said to him, "Master, who is it?" Jesus answered, "It is the one to whom I hand the morsel after I have dipped it." So he dipped the morsel and took it and handed it to Judas, son of Simon the Iscariot. After he took the morsel, Satan entered him. So Jesus said to him, "What you are going to do, do quickly." Now none of those reclining at table realized why he said this to him. Some thought that since Judas kept the money bag, Jesus had told him, "Buy what we need for the feast," or to give something to the poor. So he took the morsel and left at once, and it was night. Okay, so who are the people that we find out about in this passage? The one whom Jesus loved, which refers to the beloved disciple, who is John. And then Judas, son of Simon the Iscariot. Okay, so in these two passages, we have 4 people that we know are there. And I would tell you that from these passages, we can know where those 4 people were seated, where they were at the table. Okay, so what did the table look like? All right, so this is the image that we think of when we think of the Last Supper, right? Leonardo da Vinci painted this back in the 1400s. And it's an amazing painting, and lots of speculation has been made about like who's where and what symbols are in there and all those sorts of things. They even made a book about it. It became a movie. Well, in Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, where were those 4 people seated? Well, here's looking at that table from above. Okay, so it's a long table, and everybody's seated on the same side and looking in the same direction, according to Leonardo da Vinci. So who was where? Well, he has Jesus right there in the middle. Then John is next to him. Then Judas is next to him. And then Peter. Now, we don't know who the other ones are or what order they're in. But according to Leonardo da Vinci, this was the order they were in. Because when he read Scripture, this is what he figured it would look like. It's a pretty good guess. So if we go back to that painting. So the one in the middle, that's Jesus, obviously. The one next to him, looks really young, doesn't have a beard, because John was the youngest apostle, is John. Okay? And then leaning on his shoulder, telling him, "Hey, go ask Jesus this question," was Peter, who's actually on the other side of Judas. And we know it's Judas because it's kind of hard to see, but he's holding this money bag in his hand because he was the treasurer for the apostles. Okay, so Jesus, John, Peter, and Judas in that configuration according to Leonardo da Vinci. But here's the thing. Because of scholarly research in the last 500 years since Leonardo painted that picture, we've come to discover that the table wasn't just this long table where they all sat on the same side. It looked like this. It was in a U shape. Why was that? Well, it was in a U shape, so whoever was serving the meal could come into the middle and put food on the table, or take plates off, or whatever it is they needed to do. And people could kind of see each other. But everybody would sit on this side of the table. So Leonardo da Vinci was right that they would all kind of sit on the same side, but it wasn't a long table. It was a table like this. Okay, so how many people were at the Last Supper? Think about it, okay? So we know that Jesus was there, and we know his apostles were there. How many apostles were there? 12, right? And then with Jesus, how many would that be? 13. Okay. So there's 5 seats there, another 4 seats there, and another 4 seats there. Something like that. Maybe it was 5, 5, and 3, or 3, 3, and 7, something like that. But the table would have looked something like this, and they all would have been spread out on the outside. Now, here's where this isn't quite accurate yet. Because they actually weren't seated in chairs. They were reclining on pillows, on little comfort spots, and they would recline on their left arm and eat with their right. So, at the Last Supper, everybody was laid out like this. Now I know this is kind of makes it look like they're sleeping, but there's actually an arm underneath them like this, holding their head up, so that they can see their food, and then their right hand would go and eat. So this is kind of what the Last Supper configuration would look like. Okay. But it's hard to tell from what we see on the screen what that looked like. So let me give you some visuals that could help you. Okay. So typically, if you and I sat at a table that was shaped like a U, we'd be seated in chairs like this. But as you saw, that's not actually how they did it. They weren't in chairs, seated up like this with their arms out. Instead, they were seated like this. They reclined at the table. So they'd be on their left elbow, and their right hand would be free to grab the food. And then their feet would be sticking out like this. So this is what it meant to recline at table. Now, there were 13 people at the table. Problem is, I can't get 13 people in here to give you a visual because we can only gather 10 people at a time. But I've got something that I think will help. Okay, so as you probably know, we moved my parents out of the house that I grew up in, and now we're getting it ready to sell, so we're moving everything out. So last time I was home, I found some stuff that I used to play with as a kid, and I decided to bring it with me. So first I have He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. This is my carrying case for my He-Man collection. But I also have G.I. Joe, real American hero. G.I. Joe is there, G.I. Joe. This is my carrying case for my G.I. Joes. So, I've got He-Man, I've got G.I. Joe, and just to round it out, I've got Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. Now, it's great that I have these, but they don't look the part, right? I want them to look like they would be at a dinner with Jesus. So, I take these white sheets, and first, I fold them like this, okay? And I cut the sides like that. Then I fold it like this, and I cut like this. Creates a hole with 2 arms. Put it over the top. Go around the arms. Get a nice little rubber band. And there you go. Friend of Jesus. Pretty cool, huh? Let's go put them at the table. Okay, so, again, I can't get 10 people together. I can't get 13 people together. So this is what it would look like if everybody were little figurines. So we've got them all around the outside of the table, leaning on their left arm and using their right arm to eat. Now I put 9 of them out there, and I left out the He-Man. So this is going to be Jesus, He-Man, of course. This is going to be Peter. This is going to be John. And since Judas betrayed him, Skeletor, the bad guy. So let's figure out where these guys are. Okay. So now hopefully you have a better idea of what it meant to recline at table, where you're leaning on a pillow and on your left arm and you're eating with your right hand. And you can see from our G.I. Joes and Star Wars figures and He-Men, that they are arrayed around the outside of the table. But as you notice, there were 4 spots, because we want to know where those 4 people from the text earlier are seated. So Peter, Jesus, Judas, and John. Okay, but first let's talk about what a typical table would have looked like and what each spot meant, what significance it had. Okay, so here's the table with 9 people at it. So you got 1, another 5 is 6, another 3 is 9. So it's leaving out 4 spots. And my contention, and scholars' contention, is that these are the 4 spots that the 4 of those men were in. So what did each of those spots mean? Well, the host of the party or the dinner would be here. I know that seems really strange. You'd think, well, why don't you put the host in the middle like Leonardo da Vinci did? Maybe that's what we would do today. But at the time, that's what they did. The host would be down here. So the host would have 2 special spots on either side of him. To his left would be the guest of honor. To his right would be the seat of friendship. And then all the way on the other side of the table, if you didn't have a servant at your meal, someone had to serve the food. Well, if you think about it, you kind of go in descending order of importance. The further away you get from the host, the less important you are. And remember, Jesus even told us, he's like, when you go to a party, don't sit at the place of honor. Go all the way to the bottom, and then the host is going to bring you up, and you're going to look honored in that. Okay. So, on the other side, way far away, is the person who would be the server. If you didn't have a servant serving you, that would be the person. It's their responsibility to serve the meal. Okay, so we've got these 4 spots, and we're going to explain who is in each of those spots. Okay, so we're going to ask the question, who was where? Where was Jesus? Where was John? Where was Peter? Where was Judas? We have 4 possible spots: the seat of friendship, the guest of honor, the host, and the server. Okay, so there they are, but we haven't placed the people yet. Guest of honor, host, seat of friendship, server. Okay, who was where? Let's talk about Jesus. Where do you think Jesus was? Which of those spots do you think he was in? I mean, he was the most important person, right? He was the one who told his disciples, go and prepare the Passover for me to eat with my disciples tonight. Well, if he's the one directing them, then he's probably the host, right? So he would be in this seat right here, or this place of lounging, of relaxing. He's the host, and he's got 2 people on either side of him. Okay. Okay, so remember, this is Jesus, and we figured out that he's going to be the host. So he's going to be right there. Jesus was there. What about John? Well, let's look at the text to see. We'll just look at the red spot, because the red text, because that's going to tell us. One of his disciples, the one whom Jesus loved, again, that's John, but it's also us, was reclining at Jesus' side. Okay, so he's either on the right side or the left side of Jesus. So Simon Peter nodded to him to find out whom he meant. He leaned back against Jesus' chest and said to him, Master, who is it? He's there in the seat of friendship. And let's use our he-men to explain why we would say that. Okay, so we know that Jesus is here, and we've figured out that John is to his right there. Now notice, if John wants to talk to Jesus, he doesn't get up and do that. He just leans back on his chest, and then he can talk to Jesus. Now I'll be honest with you, that passage has always been one of the most confusing and kind of disturbing to me. Like, Why would John need to put his head up against Jesus' chest? But when you understand that this is how they would have talked to the person behind them, makes total sense. So John was on the right side of Jesus in the seat of friendship. Okay, now that you can see why John would be to the right side of Jesus, as he leaned back onto Jesus' chest and spoke to Jesus, asked him the question, who is it who's going to betray you? Now we have 2 spots left. Where was Peter? All right, let's look at the text again, see what it tells us. So he came to Simon Peter. Jesus is going around, he's washing feet. He comes to Simon Peter, who said to him, Master, are you going to wash my feet? Jesus answered and said to him, what I am doing, you do not understand now, but you will understand later. Peter said to him, you will never wash my feet. Okay, one thing we haven't talked about yet is this. That when they're laying down at the table, when they're reclining, all of their feet are sticking out away from the table. Well, one of the reasons was because when you would come to a meal, yes, you would wash your hands before you ate, but you wouldn't wash your feet. But the servant might wash your feet. And so while you're eating, he might even wash your feet while you're eating. And so your feet are sticking out. They're available to be washed while you're eating your food. And the servant would just go around the outside of the table with all those feet sticking out to wash those feet. Now, if there was no servant, who do you think would wash the feet? Well, the server would. Well, Jesus breaks the norms, right? He's the host, the one who should be treated with the most respect, and yet he's the one that goes around and washes everybody's feet. That's the example that he gives to the disciples, and the example he gives to us. He's like, I don't care how important you are. You need to be a servant. But for the disciples, what are they thinking? Who should be washing the feet? The server should. So when Jesus gets to Peter, and Peter says, are you going to wash my feet? And you will never wash my feet. What is he thinking? He's like, no, 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 Jesus, that's not your job. That's my job. I'm the server. But here's another thing that I think helps us to know that Peter was in the server spot. So, one of the disciples, the one whom Jesus loved, was reclining at Jesus' side. So Simon Peter nodded to him to find out whom he meant. Well, let's think about this, okay? As you look at this, think about where everybody is able to look. If I'm leaning on my left arm, and I'm looking that way, then I'm only going to see what's in front of me. So Jesus would be looking at John. John would be looking this way. Whoever's here is looking this way. These people are looking this way. And these people are looking this way. Okay, so if John's here, who's going to best be able to catch his eye and nod at him? That person? No. They're not looking at each other, not even close. These people, well, John would have to crane his head back in order to see them. These people over here, it's a little bit easier, but he's still craning his neck. Of all the people, who would be able to catch his eye easiest? If he turned his head just a little bit, and this person turned their head just a little bit, they'd be able to look across at each other. So that spot over there has the best chance of getting his attention. And since that spot is the server's, he'd be the one that'd be up walking around. So he'd be the one that would be, he could get close to John and go, you ask him. You ask him who's going to betray him. So, with those 2 or 3 things in mind, who do you think is the server? It's Peter. Okay, so we know that Jesus is in the spot of the host. John is in the spot, the seat of friendship. Peter, he's going to be way over here, okay? Why is that? Because John and Peter would have been easiest for them to see each other, and Peter's serving the meal. So as he comes around, he can talk to John and say, hey, ask Jesus the question. So Peter is over here as a servant. Now that we've looked at where Jesus and John and Peter are over in our table of He-Men and G.I. Joes and Star Wars figures, we have one spot left. Well, obviously, that's the spot for Judas. But maybe Judas wasn't in that spot, right? There's nothing that says Judas is in the seat of honor, or is there? Let's look at the text. So when John asked, Master, who is it? Who is going to betray you? Jesus answered, It is the one to whom I hand the morsel after I have dipped it. So he dipped the morsel and took it and handed it to Judas, son of Simon the Iscariot. Okay, so let's think about this. We know that John is here. We know that Jesus is here. If Jesus is going to dip a morsel and give it to anybody, he's got two options. To his right and to his left. Well, if we know John's to his right, and he gives it to the person to his left, and that text says that it's Judas, then Judas is the guest of honor. Now, before we talk about guest of honor, let's think about this. Jesus dipping food into a bowl and giving it to another person. Would they share bowls? They might. But they would share them with friends and family. To dip in the same bowl was a symbol, a sign of friendship. Why is that? Well, think about it. Let's think you go to Chick-fil-A, okay? And back when you could actually go into the restaurant and sit at the table. And you get that Chick-fil-A sauce, which is addictive. It's so good, right? And you've got your nuggets. Are you going to let someone else dip in your nuggets? Because they might, or sorry, dip in the sauce? Dip their nuggets in the sauce? I don't know. I mean, they might double dip, right? So you would only let someone do it if they were really close to you. If they were a close friend or close family. Well, it's not too much different back then. They wouldn't want you dipping into their bowl if they didn't know you really well. And so for them, dipping in the same bowl was a sign of friendship. So think about that. If it really is Judas that's right next to him, and Jesus dips into the bowl and gives it to him, he's offering him friendship. He knew Judas was going to betray him, but he still offered him friendship. One last chance, saying to Judas, you don't have to do this. You don't have to betray me. But Judas didn't take the chance. Didn't take that opportunity. Didn't take the friendship. But where is Judas? He's the guest of honor. So if you get to sit to the left of the host, you are very honored. Everybody else is looking at you going, wow, you must be pretty special to be at the left side of the host. And they all look at you, maybe even with envy, but definitely with respect and honor. Look at you. Pretty cool to be the guest of honor. And at the very last meal that Jesus ever had on earth, who does he invite to be the guest of honor? The guy who betrayed him. That's crazy. But that's the sort of person that Jesus is. He wanted to reach out to Judas. He wanted to show him love. But Judas wouldn't take it. Okay, so we've got the guest of honor, Judas, the host, Jesus, the seat of friendship, John, and the server is Peter. Judas, Jesus, John, Peter. Okay, so we know that Jesus is the host, John is in the seat of friendship, Peter is the server. What about Judas, Skeletor? He's right here in the seat, the seat of honor. So, if Jesus would have shared a morsel with him, he would have taken it from the table and just handed it over to Skeletor like that. I mean, to Judas like that. Judas ate it, and then he took off, right? Okay, so I think this has to be helpful to you in understanding how they were arranged at the Last Supper. Okay, now that we've seen where everybody is, using our figurines and our small little table, let's talk about each of those spots and the benefits. So, if you're in the seat of friendship, what are some cool things you get? Especially the seat of friendship with Jesus. Well, you are right by Jesus all the time. For the whole meal, you're right there. And He looks at you the whole time. Remember, you're like this and He's looking at you the whole time. And you can lean back on Him. You can lean on Him for support, for comfort, for encouragement. So the question I have for you, are you in the seat of friendship? Is Jesus' friendship most important to you? Do you remember that He is always looking at you, even if you can't see Him? Do you lean on Him all the time? Not just when you are in trouble, but all the time. And do you try to get close to Him and talk to Him on a very personal level, just like John was able to do? You're a beloved disciple, just like John. So are you in the seat of friendship? Guest of honor, where Judas was. It's pretty cool. You're right by Jesus all the time. And others look upon you with respect. But that can get a little addictive. And you don't see Jesus' face. You spend the whole meal looking at the back of His head. Sure, you get honored by other people, but the host, you don't really get to see Him. Jesus is not looking at you. It can easily become all about you. Look at me, I'm in the place of honor. And you may think you are most important, and your ego just gets bigger and bigger. And you kind of push Jesus out of His chair because your ego's so big. Being the guest of honor has some benefits, but it didn't really help Judas. He looked at Jesus' back, and he went behind Jesus' back and betrayed Him. So, are you in the guest of honor, in their spot? Do you want all the attention? Do you let other people get credit and praise? Or do you always try to be the one that gets praised? Do you use Jesus for your gain more than for true friendship? Are you seated in that guest of honor spot? The last one, the server. So I ask you, are you the server? Do you follow Jesus' example of service? Are you willing to serve? Do you care for your brothers, your sisters, your parents, your grandparents? Or do you make them do everything for you? The ideal disciple is in the seat of friendship and is the server. If you're in the seat of friendship, if you're the beloved disciple, if you're with Jesus and you're that close to Him all the time, you're going to want to be just like Him. And what example did He give at the Last Supper? He washed people's feet. Something that a servant would do, the lowest of the low. That's what He would do, so that's what you should do. So if you're in the seat of friendship, you also should be a server. Peter, being the Pope, the first Pope, he's the servant of the servants. But we all, hopefully, are ideal disciples. Being in the seat of friendship and being a server. So, my friends, now that we've walked through the seating arrangement at the Last Supper, I encourage you to go back to that Last Supper text in the Gospels and see how it explodes, how it makes so much more sense, and how you can learn what you should be doing as a disciple, especially as an ideal disciple of Jesus Christ. Thank you for joining us today for this. I hope you can join us tonight at 7 o'clock for our Holy Thursday liturgy, the Mass of the Lord's Supper. And then join us again tomorrow at 7 for our Good Friday service. And then at 8 on Saturday 8 p.m. on Saturday for our Easter Vigil. 7 p.m. tonight, 7 p.m. tomorrow, 8 p.m. on Saturday. It's been fun being with you. Have a great day.